G'day YouTube, Warblesonalot here, and I've got a response video here that I'd like to make to a fella called Tom in Ohio. His channel name is LMulky2011, and Tom has made a response video to my clip which I put up earlier today, where I talked about murder and manslaughter and self-defense and what Zimmerman did. And basically Tom pretty much agrees with me that Zimmerman did some really stupid things when he decided to get out of the car and go and accost a perfect stranger and put himself in a situation where he picked a fist fight when he was carrying a concealed gun. And basically Tom was explaining to me his point of view as an American who has a permit to carry a concealed handgun in the state of Ohio. And a couple of times he surprised me, like, yay team, Tom. Like, first one was the size of the gun that you're carrying. I really did the double take on that, like 5-shot 22 caliber 2-inch barrel folding revolver. And as you're showing it to me and talking about it, I'm thinking, well, geez, you'd want to get awful bloody close to use that and have any hope of doing anything but annoy the shit out of whoever you use it against. And then you tell me that you've had to kill a pit bull at 1 foot range while it was covered in blood, having killed your cat when it's coming to eat you, and if it can get past you, eat your baby. And yeah, it's a pretty convincing story. I'm pleased you told it to me. Bugger it. While I pause the camera, you can just sort of bear with me while we stoke the fire. So yeah, that was a pretty amazing story, but I gotta say, there are other ways of dealing with a pit bull if it happens to show up and you don't have a gun. And I'm wondering whether you've ever read the advice that I did when I was forced to ride a bicycle, Tom. For just give that a bit of ventilation through the bottom end. I was forced to ride a bicycle in Sydney for 15 months, and I found that there was an enormous number of puppy dogs who felt their bounden duty to come out and try and bite me. And I got a hold of a book on how to survive being a bicycle rider, and it had a whole chapter on defence against dogs. And it said at the start of the chapter, if you're one of these animal-loving, peace-love, brown rice and alfalfa sprouts artists who would rather be knocked off your bicycle and bitten by a dog rather than hurt a animal that doesn't know any better, then skip this chapter. And what it said is, you should always have a bicycle pump. Because if you've got a bicycle pump, you can hold it out in front of you, and this is difficult with a camera, but imagine that, I'm hanging onto a bicycle pump and I've got the hand that's holding the camera grabbed onto the other end of the bicycle pump. Now what it says in the book is you're supposed to hold the bicycle pump out between the puppy dog's tooth and your throat, and the dog will jump at your throat and you intercept the dog's teeth with the bicycle pump. It says in the book if you haven't got a bicycle pump, that was pretty silly of you. In this case, what you have to do is you have to hold your forearm out and allow the dog to bite on your forearm. Alright? Yes, it's going to hurt, but you're talking a life or death situation with a dog that weighs half as much as I do, maybe a third or a quarter as much as you do, because you look like a big bloke in that clip you did. Now, having succeeded in getting the dog to bite onto either the bike pump or your arm, now what you've got to do is lift the dog's mouth up as high as you can and then kick it as hard as you can in its pelvis. The idea is to fracture its pelvis. If you can fracture the puppy dog's pelvis, I guarantee it will have no interest in biting you or your baby. You can then go and get your arm cleaned up and you don't have to carry a gun. Right? That's how to deal with a frenzied puppy dog that seriously wants to make a frontal attack on a human being. You allow it to bite you on the forearm, and you lift its head up, and you fracture its pelvis with a kick. That, as the book said, that will slow it down enough that you can pick up a rock big enough to crush its skull. Okay? So, peace, love, brown rice and alfalfa sprouts. That's what to do with a puppy dog. I do actually understand the mindset that says you should carry a gun if you possibly can, because guns give you an overwhelming advantage. Now, my first experience with guns, and let's make it clear, this is a malt liquor video, this is my third Coopers of the day. My early experience with a gun, I was 3 years old. And my father was old school to the stage where if you were driving from here to Sydney, you had to drop in and visit any relatives or friends that he ever used to know along the route, so it could take a while. And we stopped in and we visited Uncle Fred, and Uncle Fred gave to me at age 3, put into my father's trust and said, let him use it when he's big enough to use it, a BSA .177 calibre air rifle. And there was only about 9 inches of wood on the entire weapon, because the rest of it was solid steel. And I didn't get to actually use it till I was 6 years old, but I do remember a time when my father or my sister had been aiming to nobble a bird, and they had this thing cocked and loaded on the back lounge room couch, and I sort of left the table at tea time at night and went out through the veranda to get to the toilet. On the way back I was petting and touching and caressing this BSA 177 calibre air rifle, and I managed to caress the trigger hard enough for it to go off. And of course the noise brought the old man out, and I got a bit of a belting for touching a gun without permission, but I might have been 4 or 5 at that time. By the time I was 6, part of my household duties was to wander around the backyard with this air rifle, loaded and cocked, and if a magpie was to sit anywhere within range, say 50 yards of the backyard boundaries, I was expected to shoot the thing, because otherwise it might perhaps, maybe, possibly sit on the washing line, and my mother might perhaps, maybe, possibly have washed the sheets, and the bird might perhaps, maybe, possibly have eaten a Cotoneaster berry, and that goes through the bird and gives it diarrhoea and causes it to shit on the sheets, and that would waste my mother's day. So therefore, at age 6, I was anti-aircraft gunner against the magpies and the currawongs. And God help any neighbour who poked their head up above fence height, because I was just as likely to be shooting at a bird 3 backyards away, because I thought it was bloody good fun. And by the time I was 10 or 11, the RSPCA had been, rung up and had complaints made about me deliberately wounding birds and sewing a hunting dog onto them, and they'd come to visit me parents and chew their ear holes off about what a violent, vicious gun nut of a son my parents was raising. If you have a little bit of a look over my bed, what you'll see is a rifle stock, and that's the stock of a Springfield model 98A. That's 1898A. It was my father's semi-automatic target rifle, and although now it has a 1000 to 4000 millimetre variable telephoto lens, which is capable of showing up a tree on the horizon 150 miles away, as well as the edge of the sun, and it takes a pretty fair photograph of the moon as well. For a long time I used to shoot things with the ironmongery that used to be attached to that stock before such things were made illegal in Australia. Here we see a photograph of the 1978 Chevalier College Barrel Rifle Team, and that skinny little geek sitting there hanging on to the Springfield semi-automatic target rifle from the previous century, that's me. The big bloke beside me, that's Michael McHugh. He grew up to be a bank manager, and that little fella over there is Michael McHugh's little brother, I forget his first name. And the other 3 fellas in the front row there hanging on a Vostok single shot 22 target rifles that belonged to the Chevalier College Barrel Rifle Team. I'm the only one who brought his own gun to the proceedings, and the fellow with the beard was the teacher who was in charge of the rifle club. And at the time, as a bit of a marksman, you know, I've been known to shoot 98 over iron sights at 25 yards with my grandfather's target rifle, so I'm pretty good at hitting what I shoot at. I came to the conclusion that because I'd been bullied early on in high school at a different boarding school, I had a fair sort of a temper. I can recall being 11 years old and chasing somebody with a knife. It occurred to me that I was pretty bloody deadly with a gun, and it would be a silly idea to ever develop any skills as a fist fighter, because I didn't want to have deadly weapons on the end of my arms where I might, you know, find myself going to court because I'd taken offence in a pub and, you know, let loose with a flurry of blows and killed somebody over a spilled drink or something. I liked the idea that if ever somebody pissed me off that much, I would have to actually go and lay my hands on a weapon and then load the weapon and bring it back to the scene of the confrontation. And when I was, I suppose I would have been 18, I was accosted by a bloke who frightened me, and I pulled the only weapon I had, which was a knife in my pocket. And that, I thought, defused the situation because he went away and left me alone. About a year later, I'd been off to the city and, you know, forgot about that incident, come back to the town, in the pub, befriended by him and a bunch of his mates. After I got a bit of a skinful of booze, they invited me to go out of town with them for a road party, and I drove out in my car and got a bit more inebriated, and that was when they decided to beat me up. And they were only playing with me. You know, they weren't trying to kill me or anything, they were just trying to teach me a lesson. It was a stupid idea to pull a weapon on somebody when it's just an argument with fists. But anyway, it finished up with me getting away from them, but not before they were pissing in the window of my car while I was starting the engine. And I went into town and cleaned myself up and started to work up a head of rage, and under the back seat there was my grandfather's target rifle, and in the glove box there was some hollow point ammo, and I was pretty good at shooting at things, and it took me quite a long time of thinking about it before I decided not to go back out to where their road party was and shoot the bastards up. I'd reasoned my way through the process that even if I just shot their headlights, they were going to complain to the cops and it would be all my fault. So I never even touched the rifle. I just wound up to 172 kilometres an hour on a dirt road in the moonlight with the headlights off, and didn't put the headlights on until I was 100 metres away at high beam. And they were in the middle of the road having their road party. And I went straight through the dust where they jumped out of the way, just in time. There are some people who shouldn't carry long arms, let alone concealed short arms. There are some people who are so violently immature that it's a wonder they're allowed out on the streets without a friggin' keeper, and I used to be one of them. There was a time when I had 7 firearms hanging up on the wall, and I had fantasies about using them for defence. Finally, eventually, after shooting all the meat I ate for a couple of years, I got sick of killing things. And eventually I come to the conclusion that if I have to try and defend myself against everything that's theoretically possibly dangerous in the universe, I would go mad with the paranoia, because I'm too good at extrapolation. So I'm really happy that in 1987 I chose to stop shooting things for the taste and the grease, and then a fortnight later I run into a book of God theories that said, be a pacifist. So I went and sold all of my guns. And since then I don't have to try and keep myself safe from everything that's possibly theoretically dangerous. That's what my God theory is for. Okay? I expect my God theory to lead any violent, vicious, nasty person on to have a confrontation with somebody who thinks they have to keep themselves safe. I don't expect the violent, vicious, nasty people to come out after me. Not up to me to organise how it happens. I have faith that it will happen. And maybe that means that I'm a Fruit Loop. Okay? But the point is, last time I had a home invasion, as the bloke was about to rip the doors open, I was about to go outside. My hands were on the doorknobs. As he flung the doors open, that threw my right hand onto the handle of a knife. There's the crack in the doors. There's the doorknobs. As he flung the right-hand door open, it threw my hands onto the knife. So I got that in my right hand, facing an open doorway, and what I was looking at was a bloke whose pupils were fully dilated, and with my left hand on his chest to try and hold him out, he pulled the doors off my hut. And all of the self-defence textbooks and all of the martial arts shit that I'd ever read and fantasised about said the correct defensive manoeuvre was to take that knife and carve my initials on his left ventricles as he tried to cross my threshold. And I knew in that pin-sharp split second of time that I could not explain it to a magistrate. The police would say it was two fringe dwellers arguing, and one of them killed the other, and I knew I would wind up going to jail. So I didn't kill him, and he came in and he went straight over and he tore the bloody cord off my landline, and then he wanted my mobile phone. Yeah? The next thing that went on is that I broke my ironwood, leopardwood, ironwood, hand-carved walking stick, swinging it first at his head and then at his foot. I didn't fracture his skull because, again, I knew I couldn't explain it to a magistrate. I then didn't fracture his skull with a different stick for the same reason. Finally, I decided it's easier to let him kill me, and that way he's the arsehole in the eyes of the Creator. I explained that to him. He punched me once. And then he spent the next 2 hours soldering my telephone back together because it was all a fucking misunderstanding. I'm really glad I didn't kill him when I had the chance, regardless of what the textbook says. The idea is you don't have to defend yourself. Leave that up to the Creator. Yeah, that's my way of looking at it. That's my experience. Warblesonalot to YouTube and El Mulkey. Thanks a lot, Tom. Hope I didn't bore you. Ciao. P.S. Say good day to your kid for me and I'll keep on posting kangaroo footage. Once again, ciao.